Part two of this episode 3 is our sleep component of consciousness. So, we're going to talk about sleep. And let's start off by talking about something called the circadian rhythm. And that's C-A-R-C-A-D-I-A-N rhythm. And that's Sira about and diem day. So our circadian rhythm is our 24-hour cycle of day and night, our biological clock. And what our biological clock does is it is our body rhythms, our temperature changes during certain times of the day. Your body temperature can rise in the early morning. It can dip in the early afternoon. It drops again when it's time to sleep. Our thinking is sharpest and our memory is actually most accurate when we're at our daily peak. And that's relative to each individual's circadian rhythm. Very often, athletes about 4:30 to 5, their temperature is the highest, the body is warmest at that time of the day, generally speaking, for circadian rhythm. And so there would be less accidents on a playing field when doing sports because your body would be the warmest and it would be relaxed. Your mental peak is generally around noon. So what happens with our circadian rhythm is we actually have a biological clock, and what happens is hormones are released into our system, telling us when we're supposed to go to sleep and when we're supposed to wake up. So melatonin is our natural sleep-inducing hormone, and back in the Neanderthal man days, when nighttime, the daylight was reduced, melatonin was released into your body, and it would encourage you to go to sleep. But what happens is now we have, of course, artificial light, and so the light is always there, and so melatonin is not being produced the way it used to be, and so people aren't going to sleep. Their sleep system is disrupted. I don't know how many of you go to bed and you're flipping through your phone or flipping through television stations, trying to go to sleep. But the reality is, when you go to bed at night, you should not be flipping through your phone or your TV right before you go to sleep, because what happens is your neurons get reactivated, and so you don't go to sleep, and there's light. That light is keeping you awake, so when you go to sleep, make sure that there is no light in the room. We have lights now on chargers, your television, your everything. There's some kind of little light in the room, and that really can screw up your biological clock. So, we have our melatonin, and that is very important to who we are and how we're going to sleep. And of course, no surprise that almost everything in our life, the stress levels, all are creating problems with sleeping. So let's talk about the sleep stages. So there are 5 stages to sleep, and of course it starts off with full consciousness. That's the point in which you're fully awake, going about your daily life, and what happens is you go from fully conscious and then you go through your sleep stages. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I want to start off talking about brain waves, specific brain waves that we have going on in our head all of the time. If any of you have ever had an EEG, they do them very often when people are having a sleep study, because they want to see what brain waves are going on in your mind. So it's important for you to understand that we have all this electrical energy Of course, we had that whole discussion about neurons and neurotransmitters and all the activity going on in our brain, and certain waves are happening at certain times. So let's start off just by talking about some of these brain waves. We have the gamma brain wave, and that's for really intense thinking, problem solving, fear, paranoia. Okay, so your brain waves are very active at that time, really. And then we have the beta waves, and that's your most common brain wave. Normal conversations, active thinking, low level, but fast, and then we have the alpha waves. They're slower, but higher in amplitude. This is when you're resting, you're coming down from a busy set of activities. How many of you come home from work and you're like, you just need to sit there for a minute. You just need to calm down and relax after a really busy day. And those are your alpha waves. Sometimes people will do meditation. During light meditation, you'll have your alpha waves. And then we have our theta waves. They're even slower than alpha. These are the most recorded in that zoning out stage, okay? That could be when you're driving on that autopilot. Maybe you're doing it right now. I hope not. Deep meditation. Those are your theta waves. And then we have the delta waves. And the delta waves, you want to remember this, those are your deep sleep waves. They're the slowest. And your delta waves reflect two different speeds, dream and non-dream. So we enter our delta waves about every 90 minutes, okay? Because you're going to go through your sleep cycle in every 90 minutes. So that's your most restorative brain wave, the delta waves. All right, so let's now go through the stages, all right? And as I said, you're going to go through them about every 90 minutes, all right? And it's very, very interesting. You really need a good 8 hours of sleep to get a really good sleep cycle. And there's a lot of things that will get in the way of your sleep, and we'll talk about those a little further down. So let's start off with stage one. Okay, we all have gone through this. Some might be going through it now. It lasts about 10 minutes, and this is the drowsy sensation, relaxing after a stressful day, zoning out. At this time, you're entering stage one, and you exhibit those slightly lower frequency brain waves, those alpha waves, maybe some theta waves. Your body relaxes, your respiration and heart rate drops slightly, and your mind drifts into an altered state of consciousness, state of relaxation. Your head might nod off as you lose muscle control. Now, this stage one can bring hallucinations, those sensory experiences that occur without sensory stimulus. Okay, so very often as you're just going to sleep or you're kind of daydreaming, having a little power nap, you do enter a state of hallucination. All right, so stage two. You're going to spend half of your night's sleep in stage two. So stage two, we experience patterns of brain waves. This is important, called sleep spindles. These are sudden bursts of brain activity which scientists believe are attempts by the brain to shut certain portions of itself down. All right? Technically, though, your brain is very active during sleep. It's helping you organize your thoughts, processing events that occurred during the day. Okay? Stage two is about 20 minutes long. And during stage one, and stage 2, you can be easily awoken. All right, so right there you have about 30 minutes. Now, say you decide you're going to go take a power nap. All right, and if you take a power nap, have any of you have ever slept like, oh, I'm just going to go rest my head for like about an hour, do a toes up, and that's too long because by that time you've gone into your deep sleep. And so if you're woken up after past 30 minutes, you could feel worse than if you had never gone to sleep at all. So if you want to have one of those power naps, you need to be in stage 1 or stage 2, the combination about 30 minutes, because then you can be easily awoken and you've rested, but you haven't gone into such a deep sleep that you feel terrible when you wake up. Okay? All right. Little tip. Note to self. All right. Now, stage 3, stage 4. This is your deep sleep. This is where your brain waves are at their lowest frequency, delta waves, okay? And it's during these 2 stages that we are, quotation marks, officially asleep. Deep sleep. Your blood pressure, your heart and respiration dip to the lowest point of the day. The blood vessels dilate and carry blood to your muscles and organs for repair and recovery. This is so incredibly important because this is where you heal. If you have a cold, this is where your body is restoring itself. It's recovering. It's like the construction workers come in and they rebuild everything, and it's incredibly, incredibly important. And this occurs only for about 30 minutes. Okay, this is where you're in quite a deep sleep. Very often, if there's sleepwalking that might occur, it will occur during this time, or children, if they wet their bed, it will occur during this time. Okay, so by this time you've been asleep for approximately an hour, and now you're going to go to stage 5. Stage 5 is what we refer to as a REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. It's the most fascinating stage. Scientists don't really know its true purpose, but there definitely are theories out there that it's really another way to catalog memories. If you recall from your readings, the hippocampus is really critical. It's like a loading dock for memories that are stored during the night, and then they go to the specific regions of the brain where they're stored. That most of your dreaming happens during this REM sleep, so it definitely has its purpose. And if you're woken up during REM, sometimes it's like, what? It feels so real, and it's all this crazy stuff. But all those things are little parts of your life and your mind, and they come together in a very strange, bizarre way. So this is a relatively new discovery, REM sleep. It's really only was discovered around the 1950s when a researcher was studying sleep patterns, and he was watching his own child, and he noticed that during a certain stage of the night that the child's eyes were going wild underneath the lids, and that's why they call it rapid eye movement. So what also is interesting about REM sleep is that your brain stem will paralyze you, so that you can't, your brain stem is blocking messages to your mind. So in your REM sleep, you could be running down the hall or something, and so your brainstem will paralyze you so that you don't act out the issues. Of course, there have been cases where there's some malfunctioning and people have done some, horribly sad things, because they're not in that paralyzed state, that protective state. So, as the night goes on, um, your what happens is your stage 4 gets shorter, and it disappears. So you're going back through stages 3 and 2. You're obviously not going to be at stage 1 because that's just starting you off. You'd have to reawaken and go back through there. So you're going back through stage 3 and 2 until the night goes on. Stage 4 gets shorter, it disappears, and hopefully your goal is that you're going to end up waking up at the end of your REM sleep, and so it's a much more natural thing. Some people can actually sleep very little and be very functional. I think Martha Stewart says she only sleeps 4 hours a night. And as you get older, sometimes you don't need as much sleep, but certainly there's developmentally, teenagers' circadian rhythm is different than adults, and their melatonin may uh, not come into play until like 2 in the morning. So that's why teenagers very often they can stay up really late, and then it in the morning they want to sleep late, and that's actually pretty normal. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about adolescence. But so sleep is incredibly important. Sometimes people with sleep disorders, it can be very disruptive because they're not getting that full sleep. All right, so sleep apnea is one of them. It's very disruptive to your sleep, so you're not getting that restorative. So your sleep is making your memories, it's filing away the day's experiences, it heals you, it recuperates you, it allows you to have creative thinking, it protects you, and it helps you grow. It's incredibly critically important, sleep. So you make sure you get a good one tonight, okay? This is the end of this stage, and we will now next move on to part 3 of consciousness and the 2-track mind.